Welcome to the Half Geek, Half Human podcast, where we explore the intersections of technology, business, and life. This podcast is powered by Atiba, a custom software and IT services company in Nashville, Tennessee. Now to your hosts, Anna Kate Ross and Joey Baggett.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Season 3 of the Half Geek, Half Human podcast. We're back. We're glad to be here. We've done a couple little changes to the format, so you might see a slight tweak in how the episodes look, but it's good to see Anna Kate. She's going to introduce our guest here in just a second. I apologize for all the orange you're going to be seeing on this side of the camera, but it is the end of June, and the University of Tennessee just won a national championship, so I'm still riding pretty high on that, and so I apologize.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Well, today we speak with John Wark, the founder and CEO of the Nashville Software School. This is Nashville's community nonprofit coding bootcamp and talent incubator. John founded the school back in 2012, which currently has more than 2,500 graduates, including a few that work here at Atiba. So welcome, John.
Well, thank you. It's really great to be here.
Awesome. Well, before we get too much into the software school, give us your 1-minute overview. Who is John Wark?
Okay. Well, I'm been in the tech industry for over 50 years. I started programming professionally when I was 19. We won't do the math on that, but it's a day or two ago. And was actually a computer operator on IBM mainframe computers for a year and a half before that. Entrepreneur, getting into tech, getting started as a software developer, one that was trained non-traditionally, just like we do at NSS. So I learned on the job, mentored by some very good senior engineers who got me reading things since back in those days, all we had were books. We were all that and stone tablets. But I've been involved in 6 startups, 5 of which have been tech. The software school was the first nonprofit I've been involved in, or as I say, the first intentionally nonprofit. A couple of my other startups sort of had similar status. But I also raised $30 million in venture capital and took one public in '99. So I've seen kind of a wide range of experiences. I've run product development teams for larger companies and whatever. Been in Nashville since 2005. We moved here off the West Coast after 10 years out there, and Nashville's definitely home now, and that's probably plenty.
Yeah. That's a great overview. And how do you, speaking of Nashville Software School, what is your kind of elevator speech to a prospective student? I'm sure you've been giving it for quite a while now, but how would you sum it up to someone who's never heard of Nashville Software School?
Yeah, well, trying to get me to do it twice in a row the same way is a little hard. But so the things I would say is something along the lines of we're the best way to gain the skills to be job ready for a career as a software developer, data analyst, or data scientist in Nashville. The best balance of speed to job, skill level, relevant skill level, and community connection. We teach not only the skills you need to do the job, but we also teach the skills of how to get the job search. We support our graduates with job search. We've got over 400 local employers who've hired one or more NSS grads, Atiba being a notable example. And we're a very community-focused nonprofit organization that works really as a sort of a second chance gateway to tech careers. If you missed it the first time, right? Missed it in college, didn't go to college, thought you wanted to be a guitar player, the Nashville special case. We provide a second chance to launch a career in the tech world.
And since you've been around for 14 years now or so, I know that there is a significant chunk of your student base that is a second career, but there's also a percentage of your base that's fresh, either out of college or out of high school. Have you seen that change over the 14 years, or has it kind of stayed a similar percentage?
I'd say the mix of um, career changers versus career seekers, right? So people who just have never found a career yet, right? Who could be right out of high school, could be right out of college, but they could also be 2 years of college and then that wasn't working for them and whatever. I don't think that mix has changed a lot over time. I mean, from class to class, it changes. I mean, we didn't in the beginning. We didn't have 18, 19, 20-year-olds usually. That has been a newer thing, but that's still that's relatively smaller percentage of our student population. Our sweet spots for software development is kind of 24 to 35, but lots of 35 to 45. And even we've had at least 3 60-year-olds who got their first programming jobs after graduating NSS when they were 60. And then, we've had a lot of 18, 20-year-olds. So that's been a little more recent. But I'd say, that's still not the most common thing for us.
I think it's funny you mentioned the guitar player into the software school, because I'm pretty sure that's how Caleb, one of our team leads, it's exactly what he did. He wanted to be a musician in Nashville and didn't make it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Caleb definitely had a music background, just to pick one example. But it's fun, I've said since we started the school that Nashville's untapped latent talent pool of tech people, it's all the musicians, right? I mean, how many people have you worked with in the tech world who were musicians as well, right? And that was always true in my career. I knew lots of great engineers who were musicians. Almost every software company I ever worked for had a great in-house band, or sometimes more than one.
Atiba is one. I've heard stories that at one point there was a 16-person band that was currently filled with folks on staff at Atiba.
Well, I haven't heard 16. I've heard the great in-house band. Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't say great.
Well, hey,
I'm kidding.
But that's actually one of our best predictors, right? Because we bring in people who've never programmed before, right, to school, who are looking for a career. And people worry about, oh, do I have to have taken a class, or should I have done some study and stuff? And it's like, well, yeah, that would help you feel more comfortable for sure. Do it. But we've interviewed thousands of people now, and we have learned a lot of things that are reliable predictors of aptitude, because we're always looking for aptitude, not capability already, but at least aptitude. And the single best positive predictor of aptitude is, are you a musician? Because there's just so much cognitive similarity between software development, programming, and music. And I didn't understand this until after we'd started the school and we got some experience. The learning process is so similar, because to be a musician, it's constant repetition, right? It's constant practice. It sounded like crap for a while until you start to sound better. Well, coding is a lot like, yeah, it's pretty crappy for a while, but you learn how to fix your mistakes, right? And you learn how to fit into the band, or in other words, you learn how to fit into a development team, right? So the learning processes are so similar, so repetition centered, so practice centered. The musicians just kind of fall into the rhythm naturally. So, and yeah, you guys mentioned Caleb. Caleb's a great example, and we've got, I don't know how many others. We've got hundreds.
I'm sorry to indicate. I know but I've had a question that kind of popped up, because a friend of mine, he went through Nashville Software School and landed himself a very good job. But, I see out there too, there's a lot of like the boot camps. So like Vanderbilt has a boot camp, UT Knoxville has a boot camp. So I guess, like, in your opinion, if you could give us from your perspective, like, what is the difference between NSS and a boot camp? Is there one preferred? Is it kind of in conjunction with each other? But what have you seen there?
Yeah, well, and we fit under that general heading of coding boot camp, right? Although, when we started 2012, that wasn't the common term yet. We were one of the first 6 or 7 in the country, and we were the first nonprofit anywhere in the country, and we're still one of only a small handful of nonprofits. So I mean, to the extent that a coding boot camp is an accelerated, hands-on vocational learning experience, we sort of fit there. Where we're different, I think, it's a few things. Our programs have tended to always be a little bit longer than like the ones at Vanderbilt. I don't want to pick on Vanderbilt, but their boot camps are run by a for-profit company that get to rent the Vanderbilt name, and they're just shorter. You don't get as much practice, you don't get as much depth. We designed a curriculum originally, our 6-month full-time boot camp, which is twice as long as most full-time boot camps. 12 to 14 weeks is the most common length. There are a few others longer like ours. But we talked with local employers, right? I mean, I talked to JJ back in the day, and we talked to, I think a total of 8 or 9 companies around town, where basically we said, hey, you keep complaining there's not enough tech talent. Okay, what if we train some? What would they need to look like? What skills would they need to have for you to be at least willing to interview? No guarantees on hiring, but would you at least be willing to interview? And we got those requirements. Several of those companies worked really closely with us to sort of map out a curriculum. And it ended up being 6 months. I mean, and that was partly based on my experience. I just didn't believe 3 months would do it. Most of the 3 months boot camps would also tell their students back in those days, and some of them still do, you're going to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week for 3 months. And I just do not believe that you can learn 80, 90 hours a week without burning yourself out, right? And we've since certainly learned through cognitive science research, what's called learning science now, that, in fact, that doesn't work. That's not the way the human brain works for most people. And people need breaks. And so actually our pace and length gives more time for immersion, gives people more time for practice, gives them a little bit more time to feel more confident, although no newbie ever totally feels confident. So, I think it's the, kind of the depth, the hands-on, but also, our connections, we aggressively work to connect our students into the community back before COVID, right? When we had 50 or 60 meetup groups meeting every month. I miss those days, but we've still got meetup groups, and there's still ways for us to connect students with community people and stuff, so, and then the job search piece, and we actively support our students after graduation. And I'll guarantee you, if you talk to graduates of most of those other boot camps, you'll find that does not happen in the same way. So,
you mentioned getting input and insights into building your curriculum. One of the things we wanted to talk to you about was how Nashville Software School is planning for AI and how your curriculum will evolve to accommodate this growing need.
Right. Well, we asked ChatGPT what we should do, and it said no. So that's a question we have been asking ourselves for, a year and a half. I mean, certainly since ChatGPT came out. We're approaching that in a couple of different ways. We started out a year ago by just surveying our alumni, right? Because we've got hundreds of alumni that work now as developers or data analysts or data scientists. So roughly a year ago, we did a survey and got a lot of feedback in terms of, what are people actually doing on the job, right? There's all the hype. There's all the people who have an interest in getting us all excited about generative AI. But we asked our students, what are you doing on the job? And we published 3 blog posts last year on stats. What are people really doing, right? And we asked our grads, what should we be doing in the curriculum, right? And the feedback was pretty broad, including a lot of don't teach it, because you still have to know how to code. You still have to have the fundamentals of analytics or software development. in order to wrangle one of these generative AI tools, because they can't be trusted to generate good working code. I mean, they're useful, and and also, oh, by the way, there's a bunch of employers, including most of the largest ones in town, that are in like the healthcare industry, who won't let their people use these tools yet for all the risk reasons. So we kind of looked at it, but we started to integrate teaching our students how to use a generative AI tool. And so when you ask about AI, I'm really speaking here about a subset of AI. I'm talking about generative AI or LLMs. We've been teaching other parts of AI. We've been teaching machine learning in our data science class since 2017, natural language processing stuff. So I'm talking here, Gen AI. But so the first thing is we're teaching our students how to responsibly and effectively use generative AI as really a search tool or a learning tool, right? I mean, we've always taught our grads how to use Google searches to look stuff up, how to use all of the websites that are out there that can provide answers to programming questions. Well, you can use Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever for that stuff. So we're teaching them how to use those tools effectively, but you still got to write your own code. You've got to learn the fundamentals yourself. What we're now integrating in all the programs, and we're doing it varies a little bit from program to program exactly how we're doing it, but late in the program, usually it's the last group project before capstones, is the students get permission to actually generate code and get some experience with prompting, right? Not just prompting to learn, but prompting to generate code so they can understand just how precise they have to be, just how many ways the code that's generated can be screwed up, what to look for, but also so they can experiment with things like generating tests, which, or generating documentation or, all the other things. And so they can go out in their job search and say, yeah, I've got some experience using this, but I've also seen the mistakes and stuff. So that's kind of the next step. And then the thing that we're looking at next is, and I know from talking to JJ, I think you guys are starting to get some experience doing some of this in some projects, is how do we build applications that integrate LLMs, right? Or that integrate, retrieval augmented generation techniques with an LLM to embed, that kind of maybe a chat customer support capability, or, to put LLM features into another application, because there's lots of tools out there, but okay, well, how do we use the APIs and what are the things you have to understand? So we're, moving in that direction, and we're beefing up, expanding some of the things we're doing with machine learning in the data science program to include some things around LLMs and stuff. And that's probably way too long an answer.
No, that's fine. I mean, yes, that we are having a lot of these conversations internally as well, and these large language models are certainly something that our clients are interested in and are kind of coming at us. How can we do this? And how should we incorporate this? And so we've got some plans ourselves for how we can better integrate that. But can you talk a little bit about what are some of the things you're most proud of with the software school? Maybe something that surprised you, or just kind of overall, what comes to mind as something you're most proud of?
Well, I mean, the easy answer to most proud is our graduates, our students, right? To see now hundreds and hundreds. I mean, we're now over 2,700 graduates.
Wow.
One more graduating class tomorrow night for this month. We'll graduate 5 classes this month alone. June's a big graduating month for us. So, but to see them go out on the job and then to see the things that they're doing, right? And then to see them growing in their careers and become, I mean, again, you guys have Caleb, and he's not the only NSS grad at Atiba, but since we mentioned him, he's now a team lead, right? He's now a senior engineer. Just to see, our students who were just, in a lot of cases, just freaking clueless about tech and stuff, right? But I remember interviewing one young lady who, was like, she was interested in learning C pound, and I'm like, what? C pound. What is C pound? And I finally realized she's talking about C sharp. And, and then she ended up killing it in class, working as a junior instructor for us. And, so to just see the progression, both as technical people, but also the changes that they're able to make in their lives when they get into these great careers, single mom, 3 kids, 4 kids, right? And, being able to be on a much sounder economic path to support their kids, in support of their lives. So that I go back and forth. Our students and then our staff, particularly not our instructors. All of our instructors have to be professional engineers, software developers, right? We've got instructors who've had, have 15, 20 years of experience. And I guarantee you they could all make a lot more money as an engineer someplace than they can teaching at NSS. As a nonprofit, we can't match, particularly the salaries the last 4 or 5 years. Oh my God, why did I ever stop being a developer? Anyways.
Speaking of that, actually, I was going to ask you, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I was, yeah.
What was your first kind of childhood ambition?
Yeah, that I don't know, because my childhood is so far back in the dim, dark days of antiquity that, dinosaurs were still roaming the earth with their little short arms. But, as my college major I was going to be a creative writer. I was going to be a novelist. I was going to be a writer, right? And thank God the university made me a programmer. And saved me from a life as a starving artist. So,
gotcha. I wondered, are you surprised that you are where you are now? And I know you've taught at Belmont University also, and now leading Nashville Software School. Is this feel like a path that was natural, or is it kind of like if you took a step back, like, here we are,
Oh yeah, no, it's always felt a little weird. Well, when I grew up in when I graduated high school in central Indiana, we didn't know words like entrepreneur and stuff back, right? I mean, it's like, who knew tech, right? I mean, there were mainframe computers that big companies used, but none of us grew up learning anything about that kind of stuff in this. I mean, I graduated from high school in '69, so it just wasn't a thing, right? And so to fall into something as early as I did, and as a mainframe computer operator in early '70, and then programming by the end of '71, so early in the evolution of all this, really before there was a software industry, right? And to just, sometimes it's just way better to be lucky than good, because it's just right. So no, it is kind of hard to believe, right? It really is, and just it's amazing the path and how the technology side and the people side sort of go, kind of go back and forth and interweave, because I've always loved the technology, and NSS is absolutely technology centered in skills, but we focus as much on helping people learn the soft skills, which I don't know why we call them soft skills, because they're really the hard skills. Teamwork, communication, all of those things. And it's one of the things that employers tell us, is that one of the reasons they like to hire from us is because we do work with our students on those aspects of the job. And so, because the people side is every bit as important in our grads being effective once they get on the job, or even getting the job, right? I mean, you guys know how that works. So anyways, I don't know. You started me on something and I went off on about 4 tangents.
And actually, as you know, this is called the Half Geek, Half Human podcast. We wanted to finish up with kind of how would you describe yourself? Are you more half geek or half human?
Ooh, I'm not sure I think of that as a half and half thing, because I think all of us are humans who have something we're a geek about, right? Because I think all my friends, for sure, they're a geek about something. It may not be tech, right? but man, they're a geek about something. They're a guitar geek, or they're I've had a hobby since I was really young that I occasionally actually have time to practice, of model railroading, model trains. I got friends who are super geeks on model trains, right? And they could tell you the history of the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railroad and how they're modeling some, right? So, I mean, I think geeking out is where a lot of the fun in life is, particularly when you can do it with other people, which is the human part. So I don't know, that's kind of how I kind of think of that, right?
I love that answer personally. I mean, I geek out to a lot of different things in life. I don't know if someone would look at me and say, Joey's a geek, might call me a nerd. Those that know me know that underneath all this, very manly appearance that I've put forth is that I'm just a big closet nerd on anything. So, nor am I manly on a lot of things. So just sit behind the computer all day.
Tell us more. Tell us more, Joey.
Yeah. But no, I do love that answer. And so, yeah, it's just, I was going to ask you, what do you geek out to? But I love the train modeling. That's an art that I feel like there's not a lot of anymore. I bet there is a community somewhere, but it's just not one that's very prevalent, at least that I see.
Oh yeah, it's not super visible unless you're looking for it. But like, I belong to a model railroad club here in town. We've got a basement under an old apartment building that's full of train layout, and I go to a couple conferences every year that are what they call railroad prototype modelers, where we actually are trying to. So, and some of the guys I know, 570, what is it, 573, the old steam engine that was in Centennial Park, right? That got pulled out of Centennial Park. What's that now? 3 or 4 years ago now, maybe more. Which they're rebuilding down in the old Tennessee Central shops by the Tennessee Central Railway Museum on the east side. I've got guys that go down there, friends that go down there several times a month to work on helping to restore the old steam engine so it can get running again. So but it's like everything else, right? It's like old cars, right? It's like old motorcycles. It's like art. It's like craft cocktails. It's like home brewing. Oh my God, I got home brewing friends. So, it's just so many things.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really fun conversation. For those listening, if you want to learn more about the Nashville Software School, you can visit their website. But they also have stories from the Hackery podcast, as well as a separate podcast to celebrate the school's 10-year anniversary. It's a 10-episode series that really takes you on a deep dive of Nashville Software School's origins and ends on what's next for the school. And all the episodes are great. The first one is really neat just to hear kind of the origin story and the conversations that took place to launch the school in the first place, and a lot of characters from around the Nashville entrepreneur and tech scene, how they were involved and how everybody got started in the first place. So we'll drop the links to those in the show notes. And John, thanks so much for having us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and give me a chance to talk a little bit about NSS. It's great. And it's great to share with you guys, since Atiba's been, a really good partner for NSS for, years. Let's see. When did Caleb? You guys, 2013, 2014.
7 or 8 years ago. Yeah, for sure.
You hired at least one before Caleb, if I remember right, maybe two. So.
Yeah, we were kind of going through the list. There's been several over the years.
Yeah. All right. Well, so thanks. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, John. Thanks you so
John.
much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Half Geek, Half Human podcast. Make sure to follow the Half Geek, Half Human podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Half Geek, Half Human.